when I introduce a new scale or a new standard. Also as a quick pre-assessment or a way for me to tell where the kids are at. If we're going to use scales to assess our students, group them, plan instruction, assess their progress, we kind of have to have something to work with that they can show their mastery. So I create problems for each level to introduce it, and I'm going to walk you through my thinking process and how I do this. So for math, this fourth grade standard, algebraic thinking and operations, I always start with number 3. So I have a couple done here, but I'm going to kind of work through it with you and explain what I'm thinking. I always start with level 3 because that is the grade level expectation when you're using a scale. Children should be able to use multiplication and division to solve word problems. If you look up the standard, you can interpret exactly what it says, but this is kind of a simplified, kid-friendly version of the same expectation. And then the problem and the activities you do in your classroom are going to help kids really get what that means some more. So you want them to be able to use multiplication and division to compare quantities, and I use story problems. That's part of this standard, is that they can pull information from the language in a problem. I made it a little trickier because I have 2 sets for comparison. I have sizes of popcorn and I have dollars, cost of popcorn. And so depending on how you phrase your questions, the students might have to look for the right information, which is another skill you could be integrating into this activity. I have a little note here to use symbols for missing numbers in number sentences because that is also an expectation for 3rd and 4th graders to represent missing numbers with symbols. It's just a little reminder for them that at any level, 4, 3, 2, or 1, I'm going to want them practicing that skill. So for level 3, using multiplication to solve word problems, here's the word problem. I started with this: write a multiplication problem to show how many times larger the extra large popcorn is. Notice it's 36 ounces, which is 3 times larger than 12. You know, as teachers, we can do that in our mind in about 5 seconds. Write another one to show how many times smaller the price compares. $6 to $3, it's half. I didn't make it the same, and I did that for a couple of reasons, which I'll get to when I'm on number 4. I could have changed this problem so that the comparison has the same ratio, and it depends where you're going with it. What is the point of your problem? If I did $2 to $6, this would be 1/3, this would be 1/3. The ratio is the same. It may matter if you want to do something with your higher level students. For now, it doesn't matter. I want it to be different. I want 2 different ratios here, the price to be half and the size to be 1/3. Write another one to show how many times smaller the price compares. I'm going to have my grade level students do this because I want to make sure they can do it both ways, multiplication and division, and I want to make sure they're going to have 2 different outcomes because it might just get them thinking a little more. Sometimes I notice when I give students really specific directions, like write a multiplication problem, that might be too easy, and I might be telling them too many specific details to solve the problem. So it depends how you want to phrase that. You could say write a multiplication problem to show how many times larger it is, or I could change that if I want to make it a little harder to write an equation to show how many times larger the extra large popcorn is. Do you see how that changes the task? Cognitively, the kids have to do their own work to say, how am I going to write an equation for this? To show what's larger, I'm going to be working with multiplication inside the equation. They have to figure that out themselves. That means I could change this to division, write another one to show division equation, or I'll leave it. Write another one to show how many times smaller, and then the kids have to do their own thinking again. Oh yeah, to compare smaller, I'm using division. To compare larger, I'm using multiplication. So you're already asking them to do more thinking, which is going to give you more information when you see what's on their paper. You're going to know, okay, do I need to instruct about interpreting the story problem? Do I need to instruct about writing the sentences? Do I need to instruct about when to use multiplication and division? What specifically are these kids struggling with? You'll get a lot more information when you're using open-ended questions in your example problems. Okay, I just like to work up. It's kind of my thing. I taught gifted for a while. It's kind of fun for me to see what connections I can make with them and to challenge my higher students. They might be gifted, qualified, or they might just be advanced. They might be kids who work really quickly with math, whatever, your challenge students. You want to make it harder for them. You want to make sure they're using higher order thinking when you get to that level 4. You want to make sure they have flexibility in applying the skill. So here's where I might introduce something like the different ratios between the size of the popcorn and the cost of the popcorn. Even though ratios aren't really introduced till 5th grade, they aren't really applied in problems specifically till middle school, 6th and 7th grade, your 4th grade gifted students might really attach to that idea and start to get it. So here's an idea I had for my level 4s. Write a multiplication and division equation. So here I'm being specific again. I'm telling them what to do to show which size is the best deal. I'm only focusing on size in this problem. I'm thinking right now how to rephrase this question to make it harder because I think I'm telling them too much. I'm telling them how to show me. If I want to make it more challenging and get my high kids to really think harder, I might rephrase this. Instead of write a multiplication and division equation, I might say, how could you compare, excuse me spelling, the size or cost, the size and cost, how about that? The size and cost of the 2 popcorn choices, let's think how to say that the best, to show, I'm going to change this, how could you, no, I'm going to keep that compare, okay. Compare the size and cost of the 2 popcorn choices to show which one is the best deal. Explain. This involves a lot more thinking on their part because, for one thing, they have to do multiple calculations. First, they have to compare size to size and understand that this ratio is 3 times more. Then cost to cost, understand the cost is 2 times more. Then they actually also have to compare the size to cost. So if $6 is like a third of 36, okay, 1/6 of the price, $3 is a fourth of 12. How is that comparing to like dollar per ounce? Your kids could get into a lot of conversations about figuring out which one is the best deal, and they could do it a lot of different ways because you're not telling them to just use multiplication or division. You're not telling them to compare just sizes or just costs. They have to do all that thinking themselves, which is what you want your high kids to be doing. Don't give them so much help. Let them do some of that work, and that will keep them busy while you're helping everyone else. Let's get to your 2s and 1s. If I work down, when I'm thinking about the difference between my level 2s and my level 1s, level 2s are like your average kids, maybe low average kids who you know they're going to get there, but they still need more of your help to master the grade level standards. They're not going to get it as quickly. They may not get it with your ordinary instructional strategies. You have to do a little bit more. Number 1s are the kids where you have more serious concerns. They may or may not get it this year. They may be students who are receiving outside support from special services. You really have to spoon feed them little by little, a lot more help. So when I think about creating problems for 2s and 1s, 2s, I'm still going to make them think a little bit more, but I'm going to get more specific with my task. Write a number sentence to show how many more times larger the extra large popcorn is. That's what I'm starting with right now. And the way I could change this to help them, if I see them struggling, I might change this to write a multiplication number sentence to show how many times larger it is, and I would want to point out to them that multiplication goes with things that are larger. If I see them mastering this and that's easy, then add to it or change it. I might say, okay, now your second task is write a division problem. Oops, I'm typing again. A division number sentence to show how many times smaller the price is, or the small popcorn is. Okay, it's kind of tough when I'm using smaller two different ways, but you know, you could see where they're going with it, but do you notice how I'm being more specific with the language? I'm telling them exactly what to do here, and I'm basically giving them the connection. Division goes with smaller, multiplication goes with larger. I decided not to do that for my 3s because I know they're already going to get it really quickly. Now my 1s, I'm going to have to spoon feed them even a little bit more, so what I might do is start creating a problem for them, okay? If you can do this, so let's say my problem here is going to be a starter sentence. Okay guys, we're going to compare the 12-ounce popcorn to the 36-ounce popcorn. Which size is bigger? The 36 ounces, right? So how many times bigger is it? How are we going to show that? You need to figure out what to write in the blank. How many times larger is the 36-ounce popcorn? And you might decide to do that by giving them extra multiplication, making sure they understand. Representing multiplication, we use a little x. It means times. It's going to give us a larger product. Okay, that's part of understanding the representations. You might have them do a second sentence, or you might even make sure that they really get the relationship between multiplication and division by doing something like this. Okay, if you can do that first sentence, then try this one. 36 ounces divided by, sorry, this is going to take a second. Need to get a shortcut for division. Divided by 12 ounces is how much? Or divided by what is 12 ounces? Every time you change the problem, you're making your kids think in a slightly different way. So it's awesome when you kind of have your scale done, because it's so hard to think on your toes. If you're in your classroom with 28 kids staring at you, you may or may not think of all the different ways you can structure your problem to make sure that they get it, right? But if you have a scale already done, it goes a lot faster. I quickly remind myself, oh yeah, what are my 1s going to focus on? Representation. Make sure they understand multiplication and division before they can apply it to any kind of problem. 2s, okay, they already understand multiplication and division. Let's make sure they can accurately connect it with a problem. 3s, they can do a little more thinking, be a little more flexible. 4s, I'm really going to push them past grade level. So that is basically my thinking process for creating problems, creating assessments, giving my students examples, and having something to start with in the classroom. So you don't just throw this up on the board and hope they get it, because it's just not going to help you. And I did not see the progress I wanted until I started giving them examples. So if you have any questions for me, feel free to send me an email. You can find all my contact information through my website. You can also make comments or ask questions below this video. I do sell these already made on Teachers Pay Teachers. I also have them in an editable form, so you can change levels 3 and 4 to meet your own district. No, the whole thing isn't editable, but all of this upper half is. It's about 50% editable. I will be happy to hear from you if you have any suggestions. Thank you so much for your time. I hope you enjoyed this video.